Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today we're going to talk about how you can get started with Linux if you have a Windows computer. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to use a spare computer that I have in the house here, and we're going to install an OEM Ubuntu on it, which I'm going to give to somebody who is learning how to use Linux right now. Why Ubuntu? That's what he asked for. Why OEM? So he can set it up when I give the computer to him without me having to give him usernames and passwords and things like that. So we're going to start with a Windows computer. We're not going to make any changes to the system itself. The basic process is we're going to have to download the .iso file that is provided by Ubuntu. We're going to want to verify the checksum of that file, and we're going to burn that ISO file onto a USB flash drive. Then we're going to take the target system that we are installing Ubuntu on. We're going to make sure Secure Boot is disabled, and then we're going to make sure that it can boot from the USB drive, and then we're going to walk through the OEM process. Now, if you were to walk through a basic install instead of an OEM, it's slightly easier. In this case, I'm just doing the OEM because this is a computer I had to ship out to somebody, so we're going to go ahead and just use that. So we're going to walk through the process. We're going to start on Windows 10. We're going to use Rufus as a portable file, and then we're going to get that installed onto the new target system, and then we'll come back with some final remarks. So I have my flash drive ready, and I am ready to actually come in here and download the software that we need and put this onto the USB drive, which is going to give us the installation medium to install Linux. So what we're going to do is we need to download a .iso file. This is a disk image type file. There's IMG, there's ISO. The ISO is what's going to work for CD drives. It's going to work for USB drives. And in our current world, this usually is just going to mean a USB drive. So what we're going to do is Rufus is going to be your most popular bet for this. And so you come on over here, it's rufus.ie, RUFUS, and then you can download this. When you come down to the download option, you can see that we have the 314, we have the 314 portable, and then there's other versions as well. Now on Windows, where I'm using various applications, I like portable options when those are available. The portable options do not integrate themselves into the registry. They don't integrate themselves into the system. They are designed to be all-in-one. For example, I use, when I have to use KeyPass XC on a Windows system, there is a portable version of that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and download the portable version, and then I just go ahead and drop it onto the desktop over here, and you can double-click this guy. And do you want to make changes? Sure, why not? And it's going to open up with the with what we're going to do. So this is the device, which there's the USB drive's not plugged in yet. The ISO, you can go ahead and download it, and then there's other settings that we can do. So we went ahead and already downloaded the portable. We dropped it on the desktop, and I'm guessing that this configuration file comes with this portable. So if I want to drop that somewhere else and make a shortcut to it, that's fine too. In my case here, this is okay for me to get started. Now, the next thing we're going to need to do is grab the ISO. So for this computer, as I said, we are going to use Ubuntu because that's what the person wants on the system. So I just went ahead to the ubuntu.com, downloaded, and I just downloaded the desktop. In this case, I went with the 2104. And then it does tell us to verify your download. So if you get to this step, you're like, well, I don't even know what this means. This is a Linux command. If we were downloading this on a Linux computer, just paste this guy into your terminal, and that's going to work for you just fine. But this is Windows, so that's not going to work. I used to talk about just installing an extra tool which would add a hashtag into the context menu of an individual file. But I'm actually, in not wanting to install a lot of extra things onto the system, I'm actually just going to use the command prompt on Windows as well, because Windows already has a tool for doing this. And you can find the instructions over here. Is it la-di-do, I guess. This is how to verify MD5 or SHA on Windows 10. So basically, it's the cert utility. You're going to use -hash file, give it the name of the file, and then tell it what type. Their example here is MD5, but what we can see here is this is SHA256. So just kind of scroll down here. You can see SHA256. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So I went ahead and downloaded the Ubuntu ISO file. So you can see here, it's over here. It has been downloaded, and I can verify it's downloaded if I go on into my downloads folder. You can see there's my Audacity downloaded earlier. Should probably delete that soon. But anyway, here is where it is at. So that is good. So we're just going to go into our command prompt, and I already went ahead and ran this, and just to show what it is. So we'll go ahead and first let me just go back to where I was when you first start this guy up. And yeah, my Windows 10 computer is called Spy because it's a spy. So first thing we need to do is just cd into the downloads directory. I'm just typing the first few letters, hit tab, that's going to autofill. And then dir is going to show me what is in here. We can see we have the Audacity file, we have the Ubuntu file. So we're just going to do the cert utils. I think it's just cert util single dash hash file. Then we need to give it the file name. Again, just type the first few letters, hit tab. It's going to autofill. That way you don't have to remember what all that is. And then we have to give it the type, which is SHA256. This is going to take about, 30 seconds or so to run the hash. And all we're looking for is that the number it spits out is going to match this number here. So you could do things like copy this, copy what's here, paste it into a file. I usually, for the purpose of checking my checksums, I check the first few digits, I check the last few digits, and just scan a few things in the middle. As long as that works, then I'm okay. So FA95FB7, FA95FB7, look at the last few digits, ECDF88, ECDF88, and then just some of this in the middle, and that is. So now our checksum is completed. So now we have downloaded the ISO image from Ubuntu. We have verified it on our Windows platform. Now, I don't always verify if I'm just throwing into a VM for quick testing, but anytime it goes onto production, you want to make sure that you verify. So that is now verified. So we have our Rufus. We've already done our checksum, and we have already downloaded our ISO file. Now let's go ahead and, well, first we're just going to go ahead and plug in my flash drive. I think a Linux Mint is on this one. I don't remember exactly what's on this flash drive, but we're going to hit yes on this again. And now you can see it detects the drive. So that's perfectly fine. We need to find our ISO image. So just hit the select. This is going to automatically open up into the downloads. Click on this guy here. Here's your partition scheme. Usually you can just kind of leave this as it is. There's MBR or GPT. Here's BIOS or UEFI. So that's perfectly fine. Volume label. And then usually FAT32 is what's going to work for the ISO images, and it says it's ready. So just go ahead and hit your start. So we're going to write in ISO image mode or write in DD image mode. It's recommended to do the ISO. So we'll go ahead and do that. So all data will be removed. That's okay. This is just a USB drive I have for porting Linux distributions around. And just go ahead and click on that. And it's going to start by deleting the partitions. And then it's going to write the ISO file onto our individual system. So once this is done and it gives us our final status, then we can take that USB drive out. We can import it into the target computer, and you can go ahead and install it. So as we are doing this, we did not actually make any changes to our Windows system at all to do this, because I'm using a portable Rufus instead of utilizing an installed version. I'm not installing anything else to do the hash sums. I'm just using the built-in cert util tool in Windows 10. So this is going to give me the ability then to go ahead and install the drive up there. So we're going to go ahead and let this do its thing. And when we are done, then I will come on back and we'll finish up. All right, so it is done. You can see the status says ready. We could restart it now if we wanted to. We don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and just close this guy out. And now we are done with our USB drive. So we're going to go ahead and plug it on into the other computer, and then we'll get that one started up. All right, so now we've plugged in the device, the USB drive, into our computer. And now what I did is I accessed the one-time startup menu. Usually on a computer, this is either the F12 or the F11 key. It could be F9, or you could get to the BIOS setup with the delete key or escape or F2. You'll really have to check your computer's documentation as to which one it is. And for me, I just go in and just spam the 9, 11, 12, and delete keys until something different shows up. So that's kind of what I do. Now, if you are replacing a computer that had Windows on it, then one of the things you might need to do is just go into the Windows settings, and the next time it starts, there is a repair option and buried in the settings that says next time it starts up, do a slow boot or boot into setup. Windows tries to bypass all this stuff, and we don't want to do that. We want to get into our setup. Now, I know right now I can actually just come right on in here and boot off the USB key, but for many of your cases, you may not have that option. So I'm going to go ahead and enter setup. The reason I may not have that option is you want to go in and you want to do some changes to a few settings. What we're looking for is secure boot. You can see that I have secure boot disabled. You are going to want to do that at least initially. Now, depending on your Linux distribution, like here on Ubuntu, it does enable secure boot. So Linux, Ubuntu will work with secure boot, but I like to disable it just at least to get started, so it's not trying to log in with the old secure boot system on the Windows. The other thing that you might want to do is somewhere in here, you might want to change, and sometimes these have it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you might need to enable legacy mode. Sometimes in this computer's case, you can see that you set it to say which one is UEFI. In this case, it's prioritizes that. If it doesn't find anything, it drops back to legacy. Again, this is something that I can't advise you on specifically because every BIOS is separate. So the basic key take-homes here, secure boot should be disabled at least to get started. You should be able to re-enable it later. You will have an option of UEFI and legacy. And depending on your Linux distribution, it might work with UEFI, it might work with legacy. Some of them work with both. Ubuntu does work with UEFI, it does work with secure boot, so I'm okay with that, but you will again need to disable that secure boot just for starters. And then you can set your boot priority. You can decide what's going to be booting, and then here's your primary boot sequence. So I have it set to go with the USB key first, and I've always set that computer this way because I might have Linux distributions on external hard drives. So I go ahead and plug something in, it automatically boots to that. But if I don't have that in, then it's going to boot to whatever hard drive here. So in this case, it's going to boot from whatever's in the first hard drive, the second, and then the third is going to be the CD-ROM. If you're going to be using a lot of things with CD-ROMs, you might move that up. So it checks for USB. It doesn't find it, it drops to CD-ROM. Doesn't find it, then it goes to the hard drive. That's actually how old computers were set up. Why sometimes if you leave your data drive in the old A drive, it says non-boot disk or system error, replace disk and strike any key. That's because it was always checking that A drive for something first. Modern computers, though, they generally go with the first hard drive first, assuming that you're not booting off of anything else. That's something you're going to want to change. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this one as USB key because this computer is going to be for somebody who is going to want to be experimenting with different Linux distributions. And so having USB first is going to be a good option. So I'm just going to pretty much leave this computer exactly the way it was. I just wanted you guys to see what we are doing. So we're just going to go ahead and exit, save changes and exit, sure. And then we'll go ahead and reboot the system here. And so on reboot, then it should find the USB drive first. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do the OEM install. Here's your difference. Your standard install is going to set up a user account. You're going to set everything up. If you're installing this for yourself, you're going to want to choose the first option, or if you're having problems with graphics driver, the second option. Then when you install, you get to choose all of your settings. But since I'm building this computer to give to somebody, I don't want to go through the complicated thing of saying, here's the usernames and passwords. So the OEM install is going to set everything up, but then the first time the computer boots, then it's going to prompt him for the password, the location settings, and all of those other items. So some distributions go OEM as default. So like Fedora is moving that direction. Pop! OS has the OEM install set up first. Ubuntu does not do it by default, but has it as the option, as does Linux Mint. Default is no OEM option, but there is the option in the menus. And so in this case here, the OEM option is going to be the best for this particular user. So I'm going to go ahead and boot this guy up, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to install Ubuntu. All right, so here we are. We can see that we are on the OEM install here. And you're installing the system in manufacturers. Provide a unique name for this batch of systems. It will be saved on the install system and can be used to help with bug reports. We're just going to call it Ubuntu. Push continue. Of course, change your default language. Here's your default keyboard layout. Everything there is defaulting correctly. And then here we can go with a normal installation or the minimal. We can install third-party software graphics. We can install download updates. We're just going to go ahead and do everything normal and install the third-party software, which is going to be just good for this particular user. And then it's going to go ahead and walk through the installation process. So here we can erase the disk. We can do something else. If you do the erase the disk, you can use LVM. If you use LVM, you can encrypt it. You can use ZFS. I don't know what this particular wants to do, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it at no install. But we're going to erase the disk and install now. That's going to wipe out the whole drive that is in here. So hopefully there's nothing on here that I actually need, but I've been running my other computer here for a while. So I'm pretty confident that we are good. Selecting our time zone. And then here, what is your computer's name? Let's call this, we're just going to call it Ubuntu. Okay, it already exists on the network. Okay, let's do Lenovo Ubuntu. I'm just, for this password here, I'm going to use the person's name. It's a weak password, don't care. I don't think I've actually never used Ubuntu and OEM. I was not expecting a username. That might just be a temporary thing there. So we're just going to go ahead and use the person's name, all lowercase letters. So I'll say, hey, if there happens to be anything you need, that would be what it is. But I'm pretty sure that is set up just for the initial setup here. And then when it's first booted on, you should not see any of that. It's going to copy files. One of the great things about the OEM install too is it's usually a lot faster than other modes. But we're going to go ahead and pause this guy here, and we'll be back when it's done copying files. All right, so you can see it is now done. So there is a restart now button. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we should be prompted here to pull out the USB drive. If we're not, there it is. Pull it out. Press enter, and now the system should reboot into an OEM mode. All right, so here is our final authentication required. So we're going to enter our password again. This is a very different OEM install than I've used in the past. All right. So OEM config will run next time the system boots. So we're going to go ahead, restart. So what that was about is we could go ahead and just make a few other changes to the system. We could save different settings, and then next time it reboots, it should go ahead and prompt us for a user login. Okay, so here we are when we first boot it up. Now it's going to walk through some system configuration settings. We're going to walk through this screen. This is going to walk us through all of the settings that we will need to do in order to get the system set up for the user for the first go. This is kind of like when you bring home your Windows 10 computer and you boot it up, and then it's going to walk you through everything. That's the settings that we are on right now. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this guy down, and that is done. Now, this was an OEM install. It's a little bit more, a few extra steps than a standard install, but it's here just to make sure that I can hand this off to somebody. They can create their usernames, passwords, and configure their system settings on their first time of install. Many Linux distributions, you do that during the installation process, so you miss a couple of steps in the middle. It's actually a little bit easier than we installed here. But still, the same basic settings go. It's just you do the standard install rather than the OEM. So we're going to go ahead and shut this guy down, and then we'll have some final remarks. So there we have it. We've installed Ubuntu onto a computer. Now, in this case, this was just a spare computer I had laying around here. You could find a used computer. In fact, the one I'm replacing that computer with cost me $250 on Amazon. It's a wonderful little small form factor PC. Works beautifully, and I've actually replaced that old system just with that. So that's actually what we are using now. And with that, we can just go ahead and buy any old computer, install a Linux distribution of our choice on it, be ready to go, and still keep our old Windows computer around. Of course, you could do that final step, create that installation medium, and then boot up the same Windows computer you just used if you wanted to wipe out Windows. Or you can put a secondary hard drive into that computer and install it on another hard drive. You could also do a dual boot on the existing hard drive, but I'm not a huge fan of dual booting on a single hard drive. There are a few other advanced issues that show up with that, and you want to be prepared for that. So there we have it, guys. There is how we can install a Linux distribution starting with Windows without making any changes to your existing Windows computer. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM. or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.